If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedman.
Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is someone I call a website wizard. Websites make most people pull their hair out. They struggle to build them, to write the words for them, and to maintain them. Mitch Alverson makes websites easy for business owners so they can make more money and reach more people. Mitch brings 25 years of business experience with an MBA from the University of Texas. He's a StoryBrand certified guide and a certified master black belt in Lean Six Sigma. That means his knowledge and experience are deep and wide. Mitch runs a marketing firm based out of Arlington, Texas. He's my personal StoryBrand coach. So, Mitch, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to the show and thank you for being this week's guest expert and mentor.
Oh, thank you so much, Susan. You do that so well. Such a good intro. Way to go.
Just a little bit of practice. We've been doing this for 4 years now, so.
So good. Good for you.
Well, thank you. Well, Mitch, I think about websites as, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, a sort of a love-hate relationship. I love having them, but I hate having to fix stuff when it goes wrong. It sort of reminds me of a car that you have to take to a mechanic to fix.
Yes, yeah.
But in order for a website just to be a good and easy website, are there some essentials that we need to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you think about a website being easy, there's a couple of things to think about. One is the actual technical side of it, like how to build it, how to take care of it. But then the actual content that you put on the website, we can start with that and kind of talk about that a little bit. Some of the essentials that I think for a website today, I'm going to touch on a couple of them and maybe we'll jump back to them later. One of the main things is that when a person lands on your website, can they, within just a few seconds, understand what it is that you do and how you help them survive and thrive? And so for me, that means being super, super clear about what that is. And so a lot of times I'll tell people, let's err on the side of clarity over cuteness. That's one of the main things for a website. And the second thing I would say there is having a really good, clear call to action. I just think today, a lot of people really do need direct instructions on what it is that you want them to do. What I would say there is stay away from the passive calls to action and really move towards a direct call to action. And I guess for a lot of authors, that would be buy the book. That might be the best call to action if we're selling books.
Question that I get all the time, Mitch, is should I have an author website or a book's website? What would be your recommendation?
Always the answer can be it depends. But today it's so easy to have a website that can promote your book, but also be about the author. You can use a landing page for the book or the homepage for that matter that could promote a certain book. And then on your About Us page, you could talk all about the author. And in fact, that's really a good thing to do from an SEO perspective. Today, when Google crawls our sites today, they really are looking. There's an acronym, it's called EAT. So EAT, they're looking for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. When you have that page that's all about the author, Google they'll like that. And they'll crawl that page and understand, I see this person has these credentials, this person. Because more and more today, Google's really looking for the best user experience to send a person that's searching to a site. So having that is important. My answer would be having one website where you can promote your books and yourself, to me, would be the best situation.
I often give them that answer that personally, because I like the author to think about marketing themselves rather than just the book, because I feel that the book is a vehicle to help them get other opportunities like speaking or training or coaching, because that's really where they're going to make their money. Selling books, very rarely know people who make money just selling books. I like that. Let's talk more about this whole idea of the user experience, the best user experience. How do we make that happen? What does that actually mean in physical terms as it relates to the website?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot that goes into design, and obviously that whole side of it, colors and all the beautiful pieces of it, that's one thing. But a user experience is going to take into account the navigation of the website. We shouldn't today pack the header, the top of the website, we shouldn't just clutter it up with things that people can do. We should make it nice and clean for the eye. And so today, a lot of people are using what's called a hamburger menu. It's those three little bars usually in the top right-hand corner of a website. And when you click that, it'll open up the menu so that people can see, I can see these other places I can go on this website. But it's important for the user to have a nice, clean site to look at. And so in the past, it was common to have all the options up in the header of things that you could click on and pages you could see. But now it's much more common to have a very, very clean navigation. And then the very next thing you see above the fold is that very clear statement that I was talking about earlier of what it is that you do or what your book would do for the person who's buying it and how it helps them survive and thrive. And then, the layout, the rest of the homepage from a user perspective really should be a nice story. And so once we tell them what it is that we do, the page should just flow naturally into what I like to call a story framework. We would introduce the problem. What we've already done right up front is we kind of set your customer as the hero of the story. And once we kind of get into the website, we're introducing the problem, and then we're adding some value. And then later down the page, we can actually remind them of the problem and then kind of keep going. The idea would be is that it's interesting enough that they move on to the next section.
Now, the trend, I know, is to have this long landing page. Talk to us about that. Why have people gone to that rather than clicking from one page to the next page?
I think it's more of that if we can actually tell a story with a single page, hitting some really key points in what is a lot of people know as the hero's journey, but you can actually bring that into your homepage, and it would make total sense to go ahead and hit all the points of the hero's journey on the one page versus sending them away to another page. Now, the only time we would want to send them away is if they're actually going to, in this case, buy the book or book an appointment or something like that. And so if on the long scrolling homepage, we go through a story framework that I use by StoryBrand, where it's got 7 different pieces to it. And there's always a character with a problem who meets a guide who gives them a plan that calls them to action that results in success or failure. And so what I like to do with the websites that I build is to write them from that perspective. And it would be natural for someone who lands on a page to be able to scroll through that homepage and see all those pieces of the story as it relates to them and the product or service that I'm selling.
In fact, if I understand you correctly, that landing page, that home page, is almost like a full story from beginning to end. And the end is, I'm assuming, the call to action. Is that correct?
It is. It doesn't have to be in linear fashion, right? We're going to sprinkle the call to action really throughout the homepage. As a matter of fact, you'll see it quite a bit. The other pieces of the story as well, we're going to kind of sprinkle throughout the homepage. I mentioned very early, we introduced the problem. Whatever it is that your book or your product or service solves for your client, we want to mention that early and upfront, just to remind them. If you stop talking about your customers' problems, then they're going to stop listening to you. We want to mention that up front and really turn the heat up a little bit. There's a reason why they're looking for the medicine that you're selling. Start out with the problem early, and then we can kind of resolve that in the next section of the website. That story is there all along with the plan. There's a nice plan section, at least on websites that I build, and very clear websites have a plan telling your user exactly what it is that they need to do.
Having gone through this process with you, because you were good enough to help me with my brand new website, The Author Marketing Therapist, and we went through that exact plan. Listening to you now, I'm like following through the process that we took with that website. And that's at the moment, all that exists is that one long landing page. And my call to action, as you know, is for people to get a marketing assessment. They would click a button to do that. And we've done that all the way through the site. That's a good example of, for me, in any event, of what you're saying here.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome. People go check that out. Go to authormarketingtherapist.com and look at that. It's a great example of a one-page website at this point. It checks all the boxes that we've been talking about anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, which is such a change from anything I've had in the past. So it's like, wow, yes, it's a whole different approach. Because one of the things that I've been so used to, and I see with so many of my speaker colleagues, you open their page and it's all about them. I can do this for you and I can do that for you. This is the reverse. It puts the client or the prospect as the hero of the story and not you as the hero.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's such a big, important paradigm for our marketing today, is that in the past it has been, let's tell them how great we are and everything we can do for them. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying you should kind of tweak the language and how you tell that. Certainly you should talk about your authority as an author. But again, using the hero's journey, we want to place your client or the people that are buying your book as the hero in the story and you as the guide. If we think about great stories that we know, if the people that are buying your book are Luke Skywalker, then that makes you Yoda. And so you would want to really show them how it is that whatever it is you're selling can make their life better. So you don't want to come across as the hero. You want them to be the hero.
And I know that's very hard for many of my colleagues because they're very stuck in ego. It's a very hard thing. It's like, well, I got to tell them how great I am, So.
There's some nice, subtle ways you can do it. And you can also just take a phrase and make it about the client versus about you. If you write a sentence that's about yourself, the challenge would be, okay, how can I rewrite this sentence in a way that is actually about the person who's buying my things? Once you really sit down and try to focus on that little challenge, it starts to get easier. Use empathetic statements about understanding where they are. If we think about the person that's going to buy your book, why would they be buying your book? Mainly because there's some emotional problem that they're trying to solve, and they're looking to this book to help them do that. And so speaking to the internal problems that they're thinking about or feeling about in an empathetic way is how you kind of do what we're talking about.
One of the things that you mentioned just in passing, and I'd like to delve just a little bit deeper on that, and that's the whole idea of SEO, search engine optimization. I've got this great website, but how do people actually find me?
That's a big one. I don't pretend to be an SEO expert, but I have learned quite a bit just in my time of working with clients, building websites. So we've come a long way from trying to stuff keywords on a page to show up in Google searches. It's more and more moving towards the actual user experience. And so that means the importance of having X number of words on a page is getting smaller and smaller. That allows us to actually create a page that looks beautiful, that doesn't have War and Peace written in text all over it, trying to essentially what people in the past have tried to do is write text on pages to make the Google bots that crawl your website happy because they're finding your keywords. There's really so much to get into with SEO, but what I would suggest is build your websites and your pages just the user experience in mind and not necessarily with SEO in mind. Now, there are some strategies you can use, whether it's writing blogs about whatever the niche is that you're in. You can go deep in a blog post and you can write thousands of words if you want about a specific subject. And that's kind of a whole nother strategy you can use to actually get organic traffic to your website. But it does require finding the right keywords, if you will, to write about. And then there's so many things that it depends on. There's lots of stuff to look at. There's the competition around that keyword. But what I mentioned earlier is going to be more and more important for different niches, right? Is that acronym I told you about, the EAT. So expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. For instance, if you're writing about medical things today, Google wants to send people to a website that they trust. So they don't want to send them to a website to help them with information about their heart if it's not a trustworthy website that has lots of credentials. What you can do over time is, that's one of the reasons why it's important to have that About Us page, is telling Google who you are. And over time, you build up credibility with them. Being able to really go deep using blog posts is a really good strategy for organic SEO.
Content. It reminds me of the fact that, when authors write their book and they think, oh, when I've written the book, it's finished. Well, it's like having the website. You think once you've got the website, it's finished, but there's another journey to take from there. And it's an ongoing journey of this constant marketing in all different forms. Mitch, our listeners love to know about mistakes. What are some of the common mistakes that you see people make?
From a technical side, one thing I would tell your audience is to go with good hosting. Don't go cheap on your hosting. And I won't name any names, but there are some companies out there that will sell you really, really cheap hosting. It's just not a good idea because it can hurt your page load speed times. It can hurt the security of your website. That's an easy one. Stay away from really cheap hosting. The other thing I would say is go with a content management system, the platform where you build your website, that is widely used. And so what I'm like, take WordPress, for instance. It's the number one content management system in the world. And the reason why I would suggest going with something like that is it's not hard to find someone who can actually help you. Building a website, there's lots of resources to show you how to do it. But once you have it, you may want to do new things with it. And if you've built it on a platform that is fairly new or not a lot of people know how to use, then it's going to be harder to find some people to help you. So I would say that's another one. Go with a well-known content management system. So I think those are two good ones to stay away from, is don't buy cheap hosting and stick with a good platform like WordPress. And I think you'll be okay.
WordPress seems to be like the gold standard at the moment. I know that there are many different themes that you can add to WordPress that make it sing and dance. But the basis is the WordPress. Yeah. Mitch, if our listeners wanted to find out more about you and your services, how could they do that?
Yeah, so you can go to B3, so that's the letter B, the number 3, advisors.org. So b3advisors.org. That's where you'll find really everything about me. I do free website assessments. If you go to my website, you'll see kind of some of the things we've been talking about. You'll see a direct call to action for a free website audit. And that's where a client and I, or a potential client and I, would get on a Zoom call and just kind of go through their website, where I could tell them, here's some things you might look at changing, or those sort of things.
Yes, listeners, do go and check Mitch's site out. I'll put the link in the show notes just in case you haven't got anything to write it down with, b3advisors.org. And Mitch, if you were to leave our listeners with a golden nugget, what would that be?
I thought about this earlier, and what I would say is this: go with clarity over cuteness. That would be it. Because I think we're so quick to try and come up with something that's clever and cute that honestly, most of your customers just aren't going to understand. Go with clarity over cuteness.
And that's so wise. It's so funny because that brings up memories for me, how when I named my first company and I went with the cute, Diadem Communications, and it's like that meant absolutely nothing to people.
Yeah.
Mitch,
it's easy to do.
Yes, it's very easy to do because you've got this tendency to want to be cute, but at the end of the day, the simpler you are, the more basic, and you tell people what it is you do in simple, no-nonsense words, they're more likely to come and check you out. So thank you. Your wisdom has been priceless, as I knew it would be. Listeners, go to Mitch's site, and I absolutely recommend that you have an audit. Mitch is so generous in terms of his advice, his wisdom. And so, yes, thank you. Thanks so much, Mitch. And thank you all for taking time out of your precious day to listen to this interview. And I sincerely hope that it sparked some ideas you can use to sell more books. Here's wishing you much book marketing success.
The time is now to take action and finally build your book-selling empire. And the great news is that Susan is here to help you. Visit bookmarketingmentors.com and sign up for a free 15-minute book marketing strategy session with Susan. She'll help you discover your first steps to marketing and selling your book. Only those who take action are rewarded, so visit bookmarketingmentors.com, and we'll see you again next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.